Well, look, for me, this complexity subject showed up very, very early because I was interested in multiple equilibria in the economy. You know, many people think there's just supply and demand and they cross and everything is fine. But in reality, if you look at different countries, but also different periods in time, you see that an economy can have pretty different equilibria. And I was interested in this, and if you want to understand this, then you need to look into the complexity of things, that there are different agents, they're not all equal, there are networks, somebody knows and trusts somebody else or not. These sort of things then matter. So this started actually more than 20 years ago. Fortunately, more and more people are working in the field, so I could, by reading and meeting them, learn from them, but also contribute myself. I happen to be interested very strongly in computer modeling, and so since many years, in fact, I'm developing what is called multi-agent models, specifically of the economy, and there I'm interested in the movements, the dynamics of prices. Now, all this is very general. There is a particular area where I tend to focus on, and that's global coordination problems as they arise in financial policy and as they arise in climate policy. These are global problems, and we don't have good tools to handle them. And that's the field in which I'm developing computer models and then use them for both academic research and policy advice. So you would like to know what I think and how I see the opportunities to apply complexity theory both in public policy and in the private sector. And strangely, perhaps my answer is this depends on the people. And frankly, this is true for many theories. If you have a theory which is a bit abstract, which you cannot grasp in 10 seconds, but you're a practitioner, then you need somebody whom you understand, whom you trust, with whom you can discuss. Now, if you have these, I call them bridging persons. If you have bridging persons, then applicability is very high, and they'll give you just a list of examples. But I want to emphasize that usually good researchers are not good bridging persons. The good researcher is so immersed in his research that it's hard for him to find a common, or her, a common language with the practitioner, and the practitioner has simply no time. So this is a critical thing. Now, there are some areas where there are enough bridging people. One, oddly perhaps, strangely, is traffic management. So in traffic management, you can use complexity theory to reduce traffic jams, to improve traffic flows, and this holds at all levels. It's pedestrians in public places, it's cars on highways, it's planes in the sky. So traffic is one area where by now applicability is well established and there is a sufficient number of bridging people. Another such field is epidemics. There are enough people who are able to go between public agency but also companies in the health pharmaceutical sector dealing with epidemics and contagious diseases. And again, that's a field where complexity theory is being used and is actually being used quite successfully. There are other areas where this is beginning. One is financial regulation, financial markets, both from public authorities, you know, Bank of England or the European Central Bank or other public authorities, as for private operators. They can be banks, they can be hedge funds, what have you. So this is actually growing quite rapidly. But there are many more fields where this is applicable. I'm especially interested in the environmental field. So if you really want to have a green development of, let's say, our rich societies, but even more poorer societies like India or China, then you need these things. But until now, we don't have many bridging people in those fields, and we need more. So you want to know how I see the fact that actually this complexity thing is treated as just a fad, a fashion, a passing thing by many scholars. And the truth is, it's actually sometimes very good and serious scholars, and also, and that's important for us, funding agencies who have looked into it. And I think there are several reasons that one must take very seriously. And then there's some reasons that you can ignore. But the first thing you must take very seriously is that we complexity people have made grand claims in our enthusiasm. And then you start working and then everything is harder than you thought. And so there's people who say, come on, years ago you promised X, Y, and Z, now you have worked on it for 5, 10, 15 years, and where's the beef? And I think this was actually a mistake on our part to make those grandiose claims and sometimes even promises, and then you disappoint people. So that's one problem. Another completely different problem is you are challenging established ways of thinking. Somebody is well trained with certain techniques, certain methods. You're proposing other techniques, other methods. Well, it's understandable that some people feel perhaps subconsciously, perhaps consciously threatened by it, and they think, come on, our stuff works. What do you want here? You are the new kid on the block, go home. And that's just a competitive element that exists. And I think this must also be taken very seriously, because you fail if you cannot win over some of the people who are already working, let's say, with older methods, with older techniques, but with some success in a certain area. So these are reasons that I take very seriously. And then, of course, there's a certain arrogance of people who don't want to invest the time to really study things and to distinguish. As in every field, some of our work is really good, some of our work is so-so, some of our work is, just what happens. But this is normal, and I don't think we should worry about that part of the problem. And I think you have to accept this. You start something really new, well, you have to prove yourself, and you better be a bit modest and work stepwise and respect a certain critical attitude by other people. And then I think you can actually, and that's my experience, gain interest, gain trust, but also by accepting that the other guys are, of course, doing useful things too. So this is not a case where you should start a sectarian kind of campaign. And there is this tendency in all new fields, and that's something I clearly stand against. I should distinguish, I'm going to say no, but I should distinguish now words. I don't really care about the word complexity. There are other words that you can use there. But if we keep thinking about simple situations that have clear solutions, where the problems are unambiguously stated and where there is one best way to proceed, then we will miserably fail on the grand challenges of this century. We have to learn to deal with ambiguity, with messy problems, wicked problems, and I think complexity is as good a concept as you have to capture this category of problems. And if we don't come to terms with them, the list is long, but it ends up with a big war. But in between, we can have major financial economic crisis, we can have pandemics, we can have, well, messy problems that we don't understand and that hit us pretty heavily. Okay, so I would really like to add one thing. I see research not as something especially grandiose, it's just a human activity like the arts or cooking or sports or something. And in any activity, sometimes something new starts. It may or may not be useful, it may or may not be necessary. But what is always bad is to lose a sense of quality. In the things that already exist, there are some wonderful things and there are some not so wonderful things. And in the new things that we develop, again, there will be some wonderful things and some not so wonderful things. So that's actually a big, big plea for a respect for craft, for respect for professionally solid work. And it seems to me that we can motivate very gifted, very ambitious people to work on these complexity issues. But we have to accept it's going to be hard work, it's going to be fun, but it's about serious problems, and so it takes time and patience.